In this incredible big talk by Speaker Salon alum Anne Marie Flynn, she explores diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way that you will never forget. Enjoy this big talk by Speaker Salon alum Anne Marie Flynn.
After 25 years as a university professor in chemical engineering, I felt like I had found something that was akin to a 90% off sale on a clearance rack. So I call everybody up to say, you guys, you got to get down here. But they think I'm kidding. What I tell them sounds too good to be true. As a department head, I was in charge of about 150 faculty, students, and staff, and my leadership philosophy was very simple. Everybody does better when they're happy. Everybody performs better when they're happy. So my job was to create a happy place. To do that, I started with creating a safe place, some place where people felt they could be themselves and they could make a mistake without being punished or humiliated. And to do that, I had to get rid of the swirling gossip and rumors and cliques and inflated egos and bad habits. And it worked. After a few years in this safe, productive, and yes, safe, happy environment, success was everywhere. It was like the floodgates had opened. In fact, I actually thought to myself, maybe I just got lucky. Maybe I just had like a good group of students. But as the years went on and the seniors graduated and the freshmen came in, I realized the fact that engineers and everyone does better when they're in a place without ridicule, without backstabbing, without blaming, pointing, naming. The success wasn't just limited to the students. The department was leapfrogging over national averages. In engineering, one of the golden standards is to get the level of the percentage of women above 20% in an engineering program. Ours was 46. Retention nationally, the average was 61%. Ours was 99. And completing a degree in 4 years, nationally was 41%. Ours was 97. I found out later that what I had been doing was called inclusion. I had been creating an inclusive environment. But it wasn't isolated to me or to academia or to anybody in general. It had been in use for years, even though it didn't have a name. Corporate America, when they create a truly inclusive environment, employee morale skyrockets, as does their production and their innovation and their retention, and corporate revenue increases by 33%. And don't take it from me. Fast forward to 2020 and the death of George Floyd. Businesses and institutions worldwide were shining a light on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The problem was, even though inclusion was getting a lot of recognition, many thought that inclusion was the same as diversity and equity. It's be nice, don't discriminate. It's not that at all. Diversity is having a diverse group, whether it's race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and there's many more. Diversity is easy to measure. You can count how many men you have, and you can count how many women you have, and you get a diversity percentage. That's diversity. Equity is a little bit less understood. The example that I use is, imagine that you have a bunch of 7-year-olds and a bunch of 17-year-olds in an extreme Easter egg hunt. It's happened. What you do to make the competition equitable is you might give the 7-year-olds a 5-minute head start. The goal is that everybody has the chance to get 10 eggs in their Easter egg basket in the end. Then there's inclusion. Inclusion we just talked about, but inclusion is a feeling. Inclusion feels like you're on the inside. you're cool, you're safe, you're one of them. Unlike diversity, which is easy to measure, how do you measure a feeling? How do you count a feeling? To measure inclusion, you have to measure acts of exclusion. And everybody can count when an act of exclusion has taken place. It can be as simple as someone rolling their eyes at you, somebody whispering about you in the corner. I have had the honor of being an expert in both ends of the spectrum, inclusion and exclusion. Exclusion, when it's taken to the extreme, causes damage. The U.S. Surgeon General has said that exclusion is more dangerous to teenagers than poverty, drugs, or gang membership. More dangerous. So that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Inclusion can exist without diversity. You can have an inclusive environment, but it doesn't have to be diverse. Diversity, in order to thrive and to stick, has to have an inclusive environment. Okay. So that's the big, bad exclusion, toxic. And then there's inclusion with like a halo around it. So everybody wants to get rid of the exclusion and increase the amount of inclusion you have. The truth is you don't really get rid of exclusion. You kind of push it out by increasing the habits of inclusion that you have. I've consulted for small startups all the way up to the largest production facility in the East Coast, and I always start small. What's small? You're walking down the hallway and you pass someone and you call them by their first name. Hey, Tricia. And you might say, really, like someone's name? This act is so powerful that a person in a vegetative state will show brain activity when they hear the sound of their name. Or, if you want, you can start big. Every manager, including the CEO, is held accountable for how much they know about the people that report to them. Can you imagine? Bonuses depend on how much you understand those whose lives you hold in their hands. I hear you. I developed this process to keep leaders accountable. I went through this process myself. It works. If you want to create an inclusive environment, you have to start at the top. You have to start with the leaders and then work down. If you start at the bottom like a grassroots campaign, it doesn't have as much success. You have to have leaders roll up their sleeves and walk the walk. Time for talk the talk is over. They have to behave with transparency, accountability, dignity, respect. And if you want to create a truly inclusive environment, it's a marathon. And someone's going to offer you a quick fix. I have a bridge. All of that being said, not my first rodeo. I know that there are some of you out there saying, really? Like 33% increase in revenue by being nice? I don't think so. I know it. I know you're out there thinking that. The truth is, while I was teaching engineering, I wrote 4 books on engineering. And one of those books was 800 pages long. And there were 300 pages dedicated to equations, data, and graphs that were edited to within an inch of their life. This is a roundabout way of saying that facts and numbers and logic and reason define who I am. It's what makes me tick. It is my oxygen. So I couldn't stand in front of you guys and talk about inclusion and these miraculous results if I hadn't seen proof of those results like over and over and over again. Like literally, I could not stand here and say that. Still, inclusion remains one of the most powerful solutions we have, an untapped resource for increasing the quality of our life that most people have never heard of. So if I had my way, when you looked up secret sauce, you would see inclusion. Or when you looked up silver bullet, inclusion. For me, finding inclusion was like finding a 90% off sale on a clearance rack. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this big talk, I would love to hear what your biggest takeaways were in the comments so we can fully support you. And if you desire to be on my big stage, head on over to thespeakersalon.com so that you can apply to come to New York City and take my stage where I will support you for 6 weeks. And remember, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit the notification and subscription button so that you get access to all of our recent videos. Remember, your voice matters. Big love. Mwah.